Transportation Committee. We got a quorum. We're not going to take a long time since Senator Gooch, our illustrious whip, has bailed on us. But we'll go ahead and get started. We've got two issues to hear today. One of them is Senate Bill 513 from Senator Parent, and the other one is Senate Resolution 565 from Senator Anavitarte. Said Senator Parent, are you prepared to unload the wagon today? Well, we'd love to hear what you got to say. Vehicles and stuff. Is it in here? Well, they want you on TV. You look so good. You need to be on TV.
Right. Let me give everybody. Again, and members of the committee, I appreciate you all taking a few minutes to hear Senate Bill 513. This is legislation that I've worked on for a number of years, and basically what it boils down to is the fee that was put into place when we changed the transportation gas tax a number of years ago. We alighted on a fee for electric vehicles, and that fee has now grown to $213.70. And very simply put, that is so much higher than the actual usage for electric vehicles that really it's punitive. And that's sort of what this chart shows. So it's sort of punitive for electric vehicle drivers. It is out of whack with what the amount of miles and size of electric vehicles, so that people who have chosen to have an electric vehicle are actually paying a lot more than would be indicated were they driving a gasoline powered car. And so if you look at this chart, this is based on the calculations when we originally passed the bill. So you'll see that at the time, people were not paying up to $200. Now, as I just mentioned, the electric vehicle fee is at $213.70. But so you can see that even folks in SUVs and trucks were not paying as much as electric vehicle drivers back then, and the same holds true today. And so I'm just bringing the bill in the interest of fairness and equity. We can talk about whether or not there should be a fee at all. I would be happy to make the argument that for the clean air goals, the adoption of electric vehicles is a good thing. And so at this stage of the market, it could be well argued as prudent to incentivize the adoption of electric vehicles. But certainly, even if the committee were not inclined to go that direction, we could at least look at the calculations, as you and I have discussed, Mr. Chairman, and have them be fair and equitable to the type of car and miles driven, rather than sort of unfairly penalizing those who have chosen to have an electric vehicle. So that's the purpose of the legislation, and I'm happy to answer any questions and bring up testifiers who are more knowledgeable as to the topic than I am.
You mean there's somebody more knowledgeable than you, Senator?
Only a little, but a little, yeah.
Okay.
You know, I just came from a meeting on another topic, and she devotes a lot of time to this specific line of work. So
well, if you don't mind, if you could kind of tell us the math of how you came up with that the electric vehicles being, quote, overcharged, the comparison. Can you do some math for me?
Well, I am not good at math, but I can tell you that the calculation at base, in a general sense, and you know, Ann Blair with Electrify Georgia can clean up behind me, but at base, it's just the size of the car and the miles driven. And then therefore, you know, how much of would they be paying in a gas tax if a similarly sized car driving that many miles was running on gas? And you get to a calculation of probably $70 to $80, not $213.
Now that $70 or $80, is that what they'd be paying to the state of Georgia? Is that
Yes.
what you're calculating on?
Yes, sir.
Do you know they also pay the federal excise tax?
I'm not as familiar with the federal side of things.
Are those in your calculations?
I don't think so. Well, whatever we put in the bill, you probably know more about that than I do. You should answer the question.
Well,
What did we put in the bill?
I'm
all
not
those
here to,
years?
I'm
You're the
not here to answer
transportation
your
chair.
question, Senator, but I am here to ask questions.
Okay, so when we did the bill, my statement on the $200 is what we changed on the gas taxes and the fee that was at that time put on electric vehicles. And I would have to dig myself more, absent your own knowledge or Ann's, to answer the part about the federal excise.
Okay, and I'll be glad to listen to her testimony as well. So
Excellent.
Our President Pro Tem has a question. You're number 3.
I was going to answer your question. Were you making the statement that they don't pay federal tax, or were you asking if they pay?
No, I know what they do and don't. So
I do too.
they and
He's trying to see if I know, and I said I don't. Please, please edify us.
So you're not going to tell her?
said you. Well, I'm gonna wait to hear from the other expert witness, sir.
Okay. All right.
You know, I wouldn't want to give them all the answers. Are there questions for our esteemed colleague?
Non-trick ones that, but I'll just tell you if I know it or I don't.
Well, that's good. We like honesty is a good thing. If you want to have your witness to step up, we'll be glad to.
I would love to do that, Mr. Chairman.
And of course, this is just a hearing on the bill. One of the things, and I'm not sure where it got displaced along the way, but we do have some numbers from the U.S. Department of Transportation and others that kind of do a cost comparison of where we're at on the fee. And I will tell you that Senator Gooch, who had to leave because of another conflict, actually has proposed that we do a study on electric vehicles and where we go. So that'll be one of the things that I will encourage the more discussion and more involved math on that, because I can tell you that from the numbers that I have seen, we're about in the right place on the electric vehicles, but that we are grotesquely off on any type of commercial use of a vehicle, well, a battery powered vehicle, electric vehicle in that regard. But that'll be one of those things that we'll be looking at in our study committee. So Ms. Blair, what was your first name?
Ann.
Ann Blair.
Good afternoon.
Good to see you again, Ms. Blair.
Yeah, good to see you too. Thank you, Senator Ginn, and members of the committee. I'm glad to be here, and thank you for Senator Parent for that introduction of this bill. I am Ann Blair. I'm president of EV Club of the South, which is a car club based here in Atlanta, Georgia, that's been here around since the late 90s. And I've been president over the past 5 years. And also in my day job, I'm the director of policy at the Electrification Coalition. And I am here today speaking in support of SB 513. To give you a little bit of background, the Electrification Coalition is a nonpartisan, nonprofit organization that, alongside our sister organization, SAFE, partners with the Energy Security Leadership Council of 4-star admirals and generals, who I believe some of you may have met a few years ago, to promote policies and actions that facilitate the widespread adoption of electric vehicles. And the reason we do that is to combat our nation's transportation dependence on oil for national security, and to maintain U.S. leadership and competitiveness across the automotive supply chain for economic security. Oil accounts for 90% of energy use in transportation in the United States. Every year, the U.S. taxpayer spends $81 billion for the U.S. military to safeguard our global oil supply and trade. And our reliance and exposure to the global oil market is a detriment to our national security, a market controlled and manipulated by countries with the world's largest and cheapest oil reserves that share neither our interests or our values, as you know about the circumstances today. We have long seen electric vehicles and the domestic EV industry as the most promising solution to break oil's monopoly on our transportation system. As we shift away from gasoline to EVs, our entire EV supply chain makes accelerating the adoption of EVs in the US market much more urgent. Reducing the cost of EVs is one of the most effective and powerful policy levers that we have to accelerate EV adoption. Conversely, EV fees, like the ones that was adopted in Georgia in 2015, is punitive. And it can have a negative, it can and will has had a negative effect on our adoption rates. One study by the Institute of Transportation Studies found that for every dollar increase in EV fees, it can decrease adoption rates by 0.24%. In other words, a $100 fee would on average decrease adoption rates by 24%. So in the current form at $213.70, it is the highest EV fee in the country. There is a trend across the country in EV fees, and they range from about $50 annually to what Georgia's is at $213. So it is the highest fee for light duty vehicles in the country. And they're intended to offset the lost gas taxes. But it is higher than what gas and diesel vehicle owners are currently paying in gas tax. Thus, we consider it a punitive fee again. We recognize as EV drivers and owners, we need to pay something for the roads. But again, I want to point out the punitive nature of the fee in comparison to the number of miles that a diesel or gasoline car drives. So back into 2015, when Jay Roberts proposed this issue, and he is no longer in the legislature, it was done very hastily. And in fact, if you go back and listen to the testimony, he admitted to making estimates and then rounding up on that fee to get to the $200 that was passed. So, EV drivers are now on the hook for paying a much greater portion of road use fees than those of gasoline vehicles. And I want to highlight just a couple of examples. So our EV club members often, share their stories. This has been the biggest issue for them since 2015 with the repeal of the tax credit and the increase in the user fee. And I want to share just a few stories to show kind of the discrepancy in what this fee means. So Richard S. On the EV Club, he drives a Nissan Leaf, a 2018. He commutes around 12,000 miles annually. He drives in 3 days a week, about 80 miles each day for his commute. So he drives.
Pardon me a second. Where does he drive into?
I don't know where he lives actually, but he drives 80 miles a day. I need to go back and check where he is in the state.
Okay. And the reason I interrupt to ask you this is one of the things that we do is a great perk for anybody driving an electric vehicle. They can purchase an alternative fuel tag. If he's driving in, I'll use me as an example, or President Pro Tem that might be coming down I-85. They can drive in the HOT,
Right.
which is a toll lane, for free.
Correct.
So that typically would equate to about $20 a day if I know my tolls right. Said doesn't add up, doesn't take too long to add up to thousands of dollars.
And that's great. I would like to address maybe the license plate issue separately because it's a little out of whack, and I'd like to kind of go over that a little bit. But I want to share, just a couple other examples. Daryl K, he drives a Chevy Bolt. He's owned a Nissan Leaf since 2012. He drives 3,500 miles a year. 3,500 one person, 12,000 for another person. We have another member, Nancy. She's retired, drives a 2011 Nissan Leaf. She drives 3,000 miles per year. Dan Gray, 59 years old, drives a 2017 Chevy Bolt, drives now 9,000 miles per day. And my point is that people are driving a lot of different distances, but they're still paying the same amount in their fee. And so, we need to get more on a level playing field with these fees. And I think, the current fee is punitive. Now, to your question about, or point on the license fee, is originally when the alternative license fuel plate legislation was put in place, it specifically said that the fees for the license plate would go to the purpose that eventually this new user fee was put into place. So I think it's $35 or something. I can't remember the exact license plate fee now, but that originally was designed to offset those costs. And people who get the alternative fuel license plate continue to pay for that fee, but then on top of it, they pay the $213. Now, if If you are an EV driver, you don't necessarily have to get the plate. My Nissan Leaf does not have the plate. And because I don't drive on the highways, live in Avondale Estates. I don't drive very far, so I don't, have, very many places to go. So I don't need to take advantage of that perk. Alternatively, plug-in hybrids like a Chevy Volt, you do not have to pay the $213.70, which in my view is a great thing. Although in my Chevy Volt, I only drive on the electricity portion of it, unless I'm driving to the beach or otherwise. And, but if I were to get the alternative fuel license plate fee tag, I would pay that tag, and then it also triggers the user fee. So then I would need to pay the $213.70. So there's just a inconsistency in the way those provisions were both set up. And I think we need to pick one and make it tied directly to that fee. So just, in closing, we believe the fees are aggressive. They're hitting, lower income consumers, many who are wanting to get in the cleaner EV technology disproportionately than others. And we support SB 513 and open to further discussion on this issue. So thank you.
Other questions for Ms. Blair? Just so you know, said the Senator Parent, we used to be a donor state when it came to federal excise tax. We contributed more to other states' benefit than ours. I think currently right now, the federal excise tax is 18.6%. Said the per gallon, and we don't collect a dime of that from our friends over at the electric vehicle world. They don't pay anything to the federal government, and therefore we don't get any money back. Today, we actually return more money of that back to Georgia, bless you, than others. So when you start doing a comparison of the electric vehicle fee compared to the federal excise tax, said we're all of the electric vehicle fee stays here in Georgia. So it's an offset with the federal excise tax. And when you run the math, it actually runs out about the same for somebody that drives 12,000 miles a year. And one of the things that on our committee members that we, I'm not a proponent for, but there are people in other states that charge a fee based on the vehicle miles traveled. The accounting and the nightmare of that not be one of those things that I want to get into. I'm not a proponent for it. So.
Yeah, if I could just add, one other thing to your point about some of the alternatives that people are looking at. Many states, and particularly with a lot of these new infrastructure dollars coming into departments of transportation across the country, is doing things like you mentioned earlier, having study committees, having some further evaluation of what states really need to be looking at from a macro perspective on readjusting, the gas tax or other ideas, one of which is the vehicle miles traveled provision. And, one of the things that I am a proponent of is, for example, if you drive a gasoline car now, you have to go get your emissions inspected. And they do note when you go and do that, what your miles are. Well, what if we require EVs now to go in and, the mileage is simply checked annually on your birthday, since we love to do, that surprise birthday gift and go and do that at that time. So that is another option. There's several other pilots that people are doing, voluntary programs and other pilot programs to look at that, and happy to dig into some of those alternatives with many of you, if there is interest. So thank you again.
Thank you, Ms. Blair. I believe we have on Zoom Rick Tamplin, the Alliance for Transportation. Rick, are you there? Can you get?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
We can. We have no visual.
Okay, let's see. There we go. How about that?
Works for me. Good to have you.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for having me today. My name is Rick Tempchin. I'm a senior advisor to the Alliance for Transportation Electrification. We're the trade association representing electric utilities, including Georgia Power, auto companies, including Ford and General Motors, and electric vehicle charging companies, primarily. And we're primarily engaged with policymakers at the state and local level to remove barriers to EV adoption and encourage acceleration of EV infrastructure deployment. As far as my background, I spent most of my career with the Edison Electric Institute, which is the Electric Utility Trade Association, and much of that time has been spent supporting efforts to commercialize electric vehicles. I appreciate the opportunity to provide testimony in support of Senate Bill 513. Before I start, I'd like to clarify something that you mentioned about the federal excise tax. My understanding is that the tax that comes back to the state of Georgia is based on a baseline 2015 amount and is formula based. So there is not a loss of taxes, federal taxes from electric vehicles. And I just wanted to clarify that. It's a little bit confusing, the formula, but there is no loss of federal taxes at all. So let me continue along those lines that we talked about before. So we're focused on promoting EV adoption, and we're very concerned about taxes on electric vehicle drivers, and especially Georgia. As Ann mentioned, the tax in Georgia is about $214 per year, and it's the highest road user tax in the nation for electric vehicles. So Georgia is a high tax state when it comes to electric vehicles. The average tax of all 50 states is $68 a year. 20 states charge zero taxes on electric vehicles. Of the 30 states that have an annual tax, the average is $113. So Georgia's tax is almost twice the average of the states collecting an EV tax and over 3 times the average of all 50 states. And most importantly, Georgia's registration tax is clearly greater than the annual gas taxes paid by drivers of comparable equivalent gasoline vehicles. So that in our mind, that makes this exorbitant tax punitive, discriminatory, and inequitable. It's a disincentive to purchasing electric vehicles, and it's not based on any fact-based methodology. We can't see where the number came from, frankly. And we believe this bill represents an important first step in rationalizing the tax that's required to be paid by in Georgia.
Champion, I don't know if you hear me or not.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, I can hear you.
Since you mentioned frankly, I'm going to go ahead and interject right there.
Okay.
On the federal excise tax that's paid in, that's the money that comes back to the states. Every gas vehicle does pay that, and it does come back to Georgia in federal excise tax. So want to make sure we're clear on it. But do you know what the ranking of states with electric vehicles in it and the per capita, what that number is, where Georgia falls?
I do not.
Georgia has the second, I believe, the second highest use of electric vehicles of all 50 states. It still is. And so when we look, if you're telling me that we're overcharging on electric vehicles, it must be one of those things. People are real excited to pay it because we are doing a lot of opportunities for electric vehicles. So I don't want to, it's not my position to argue with you on that, but I just do want to make sure you understand some of the facts that we're dealing with on electric vehicles. And I'm a big proponent for expanding our electric vehicles. That's why we're moving forward on a study and what we want to do to try to help make sure that those charges are realistic. Where we probably have the biggest offset is on commercial vehicles and delivery vehicles, because we're not charging enough of a fee for those vehicles. But I'll let you go ahead and complete your testimony.
Okay, yes, thank you. But just to clarify about the federal tax, my understanding, it's based on a formula, and it's not based on how much money goes in to the federal government. It's based on a formula from 2015 receipts, and it comes back regardless of the fact that electric vehicles don't pay a federal tax. Just wanted to clarify that because that becomes a little confusing, but basically federal taxes have nothing to do with the money that Georgia gets back from vehicles that pay at the pump or electric vehicles that don't pay at all, that don't pay federal taxes. That's irrelevant. And maybe we can clarify that offline, but that's an important point. And just to clarify another point, early on, there were a lot of electric vehicles sold in Georgia because there was a sales tax rebate, I believe, of $5,000, and that's been eliminated also. So I expect that the sales growth has leveled off. Let me continue. As Ann said, the high taxes on electric vehicles clearly limits EV sales. And besides the effect on potential buyers and current EV owners, we believe this punitive tax serves as a strong deterrent to economic development investments and jobs by the EV industry in the state of Georgia. Manufacturers and EV supply chain contributors are well aware that Georgia has unfriendly EV tax policies, and it may make them think twice about investments in the state. Additionally, increasing the number of electric vehicles and encouraging them to charge in off-peak periods of the utilities in the state will provide downward pressure on rates of all electric customers. So let me restate that. If electric vehicle drivers are plugging in during off-peak periods, this reduces the rates of all electricity customers because it trims the peaks, fills the valleys, and makes the electric supply more efficient. And so we feel that the exorbitant tax should be eliminated until a rational approach to taxation of all vehicles is developed. Georgia, as in most states, has a highway funding gap, but EVs and other alternatively fueled vehicles are not the cause of fund shortfalls. The key reason is that all vehicles are becoming more fuel efficient. Reducing the taxes paid into the transportation fund for each mile of driving. Another reason is that inflation has reduced the transportation budget's purchasing power. And there are other options that might be considered. You mentioned vehicle miles traveled tax. That's one thing that folks are looking at. And by the way, the federal government is, through the Infrastructure Act, is providing $125 million to states to research vehicle miles traveled or mileage-based user fees. So that's the movement among the states and the federal government. And they're working to transition to alternatives that are fair to all drivers, independent of the fuel they used. And let me just give you an example of what we're talking about here, because it helps make sense. A Honda Civic gasoline car that gets 36 miles per gallon, one of the highest efficiency gasoline cars, that travels 10,000 miles would pay about $81 in gasoline taxes. An older Honda Civic would pay more. So the fact that we're taxing at the pump is antiquated, and the movement is towards a different method for collecting fees for road use. So in conclusion, we support repealing the current punitive registration tax in Georgia for electric vehicles. And we recommend that, I think you mentioned that you have a study that's going to be underway. We recommend that the DOT come back to the legislature next year with an analysis of appropriate options. And then the committee could consider a fair way to collect road use taxes. I thank you for your time and look forward to your questions.
Yeah. Anybody have any questions? I have passed out to our committee members some data from the U.S. Department of Energy, dealing with vehicle miles traveled and your fuel economy and what's going on. And Senator Parent, you have a copy of that. Based on the taxes that somebody's paying for a vehicle that's propelled with regular gasoline, according to the Department of Energy, they're paying in Georgia, they'd be paying $225.15. For a light truck, it's $313.50. The real bargain for those people is if you're driving a delivery truck or a Class 8 truck. Unfortunately, we don't have too many of those on the road, but I did want to share that with the committee. And this all followed up from HB 170 back in 2015. We will be doing some analysis on electric vehicles with a study committee this year, hopefully. We'll be looking into it. Senator Parrott, I appreciate you bringing this to our committee and appreciate the testimony from your guest. I'm gonna move on to Senator Anna Batarte. Thanks for presenting. I believe, Senator, you have a resolution you'd like us to entertain.
Chairman, I think I'm on mic 4. Yeah. Mr. Chairman or Chairman, frankly. I'll be very brief. Senate Resolution 565 is designating the Northwest Georgia logistics corridors and official logistics growth corridor. In the resolution, we're designating the communities, naming the counties, but the communities, including the cities that are contained in these counties in Carroll, Chattooga, Douglas, Floyd, Harrelson, Hurd, Paulding, Polk, and Walker counties. The senators from these communities have co-sponsored this legislation with me. The focus of the corridors is basically US Highway 27 that connects north-south from the northern part of the corridor to the southern part in Hurd County. US Highway 278 from the Cobb County line to Alabama, the state line in Alabama with Alabama. Interstate 20 from Douglas County to the state line. And other state routes as communities identify them, such as State Route 101 in Polk County and going north. So the purpose of this resolution, very similar to, and I'm sure Senator Watson is familiar with this, with the technology corridor that was created in Southeast Georgia, as we're developing an economic development strategy to attract supply chain companies. And as we have this statewide conversation about freight and mobility, to bring industry to West Georgia that's much needed in many of these communities. So these communities will working together and partnering together, such as we've seen in Southeast Georgia, and thus this resolution is to kind of formalize that process as we have these conversations in the months and years to come. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator. Are there any questions for the fine senator? Said Senator Miller, you got a motion you want to?
At the appropriate time,
Now's the time, sir.
move do pass.
Have a motion and a second, do pass. Is there any further discussion? Please say aye if you're in favor.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion is unanimous.
Thank you.
So we stand adjourned. Thank you.